6 o'clock? Okay, we're about to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Directors, Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, Wednesday, February 19, 2020, regular meeting. Roll call, please. Here.
Here. Director Riley?
Here.
Director Edmonds? Here. Director Hoffman?
Here.
Director Adams?
Here.
Director Potter?
Director Potter is at TAMC up in Sacramento today, heading over to League of Cities activities in Yountville tonight and tomorrow, so we cannot
Okay.
attend.
So there's only 6 of us. Y'all remind me of that. Okay, will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, any additions and corrections to the agenda?
I would like to add item number 16 to the consent agenda.
Okay, we're adding item 16 to the consent agenda.
And that's because that item was previously heard in closed session and deliberated, but it has to be approved in open session.
Okay,
There's one additional change on page 133 of your packet. There's a typo in the second paragraph of the body of the text, in the third line. The January total should be 5,789 acre feet. So again, that's page 133, second paragraph, third line, 5789.
5, 7, 8, 9. Thank
So
you.
Yeah,
instead of,
instead of 13072.
okay.
And we knew one of you directors probably already caught that, so we just wanted to get out in front.
Okay, thank you. We'll make those changes and we'll see. We need a motion to make those changes, please.
I'll make the motion first, thanks.
Director Evans made the motion, second by Director Riley. Any public comment on that? On these items changes? No public comment? All those in favor say aye. Aye. 6-0.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Oh, we gotta have, we're gonna get out of here so you can go see that debate. Let's go through oral communication. Let's get to oral communication.
Oh, okay.
Anyone wish to address the board on consent calendar, information items, closed session items, or matters not listed on the agenda may do so only during oral communication. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The public may comment on all other items at the time they are presented to the board. Oral communications are now open.
Good evening, Susan Schiavone from Seaside. First off, I want to thank Supervisor Adams for coming last night to the CPCU hearing. She did a wonderful job presenting her information and advocating for her customers here. Thank you very much, and for
Microphone.
Ben Edwards also for attending, appreciated that. Also, I just want to congratulate everybody here in this institution for coming to the point where we now have Pure Water Monterey up and functioning and running. This has been a huge effort, and I think everybody here should be very proud of their part they played in funding and working this to its fruition. It is a pioneering project, award-winning project, and I think everybody here should be very proud of the milestone they've met. So I'm also looking forward, hopefully, to an expansion of this project and for Cal-Am to sign a water purchase agreement in order to make this happen truly the way it should happen. And also, I want to support the ratepayers advocacy hearing. I'm not sure what you call it, but they're appealing legally to try to stop the surcharges and keep them to a minimum of 20% for Cal-Am's bill. I really want that to happen, so I'd like to just, I know you have it in one of your handouts, so I hope you'll support that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Melody Chrislock, Public Water Now. On that same note, so this chart is probably something a few of you have seen, but not many of you. This I dug out, I had Richard Brushmeyer dig it out of the big Public Advocates report. The one you've got in the report is the statewide version, but this is ours. This is just for our district for the last 10 years. And it's kind of shocking. So 9.3 was the increase for the statewide 10-year, every year, 9.3%. Cal-Am's bills went up all across the state, average. Here, they went up 17% every year for the last 10 years. That's how we got to the most expensive water in the country. So we had quite a meeting last night with the CPUC. Commissioner Sharoma was there, ALJ Gerald Kelly, and we hope they heard us. But I've learned a lot about this from the Public Advocate's office in the last few weeks. They were actually the ones that alerted me how concerned they were about this pending case before the CPUC and what Cal-Am was actually asking for. And these surcharges, there are at this point 97 surcharge accounts for Cal-Am in the state of California with $199 million in them, just waiting to be added to bills. It's really, Richard Rochmeyer said, this is the most outrageous one I've seen yet. Not only that, they want to add 9.2% to that $199 million. They want their rate of return on it, which they've never been allowed, because if that, as in a RAM charge, if that water had gone on a bill in a timely way, they would have made no rate of return on it. But now they've got it in the surcharge accounts, and they're asking to put a rate of return on it of 9.2%. So, yes, I know that we've already filed a protest in July to this, but their report just came out Friday, so this, what you've got is just a little piece of it, basically a summary of it. It's, I don't know how many pages it is, but Dave would know. Anyway, it's pretty interesting reading, just the summary alone, to see, and they did a beautiful job of just getting it, really boiling it down to what needs to be said to try to stop Cal-Am from doing this. Really what happens is they do the general rate case, and then in between the 3 years, they add all these other charges. Like, most consumers didn't know that in November, 12% got added to our bills for the Monterey pipeline. So that happens all the time, and then they come to the general rate case, and then they say they want 10.6% for next year, but they just got 12.3%, and now they just, so this is how it ends up being 17% a year over 10 years. Anyway, it was educational, so thanks.
Thank you. Oral communications still open? Oral communications are closed. Okay, let's move on to the consent calendar now. Anyone would like anything pulled from the consent calendar?
I have a
Okay, let's go. Director Rowley had his hands up first.
okay.
I have a question on item 7. It's only a question for information, but do I pull it or do I ask?
Well, you pull it and ask your question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it's Director Adams
I have a question on number 4.
on number 4. And I'm gonna pull 5.
And I just have questions on number 6, so.
And the question on number 6.
Jeez.
Okay,
Good thing we have the 16.
okay. I thought the vice chair was gonna get out of here by 6:30. I don't think so. Okay, approval of the balance of the consent calendar. We have anything left?
I move approval.
Yeah. and
Okay, moved by
I-
the vice chair, second by,
sorry. Before I second, I would like to confirm that that consent calendar consists of items 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, and 16.
Yes.
yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'll
Thank
second.
you for your help. Okay, we got a first by the vice chair, second by Director Evans. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, 6-0. Okay, let's start with number 4.
So this is a question that's more out of curiosity than anything else. On page 19 of the packet,
Mhm.
Exhibit 4A, I'm just curious, is this an electric truck?
No.
I
What-
don't- it
what
looked
made
as
you
if it
think
says
that?
It's under item 446.
Oh, electric six-speed auto?
Yes.
Not sure what that means, honestly. But it's not, it's your traditional.
I mean, I just couldn't believe that we were buying an electric truck.
Yeah.
You know, just, I couldn't quite picture this happening.
Yeah.
So,
No, we're not there yet.
okay. I mean, I know they do, and it would be wonderful, but I have a feeling this is a workhorse.
And also, the reason the bid is so much better is these guys in particular know kind of their corporate discount game for public agencies a little better than some of the other local dealers. So the reason there's such a disparity.
Well, it's great. Okay, it's not electric. Thank you for that. I was curious.
Okay,
Move approval of item number 4.
I have a question on number 4 also.
okay, go ahead, Director Hoffman.
I see we got 3 costs from 3 different Ford dealers for only Ford F-150s, and the highest rated 4x4 by Edmunds is the Dodge Ram, so I'm just wondering why other manufacturers weren't looked at as well.
I think we've just gotten into a favor for the Ford F-150, and it's just, but it's a good question. I don't know if the features are identical or not, but, yeah.
Are all your other vehicles Fords?
Well, yeah, and we have them serviced primarily through City of Monterey's corporate yard, so, you know, it's more consistent, but that doesn't mean they don't know how to fix a Dodge Ram either, so.
I'll second the motion for approval.
Okay, who was the first on that?
Oh, Dini.
Director Adams. Okay, first was Director Adams, the second by Director Rowley. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 6-0. Okay, number 5. I pulled number 5, and the only reason I pull it because there was a couple of comments in that one for me. One, I'd like for the district to go out and get bids for something over $25,000.
You're in luck. We went out, between when you first admonished us on that point and today, we went out to 3 different,
Okay, did we get a copy of all that goodness?
No, I did not give you a copy
Wow,
of that.
wow,
yet.
it doesn't count
But
till I
can
see it.
put on the screen for you to see.
Please,
If you would like
please
to.
put it up there.
Sarah's prepared for that.
Please put it up there.
And I do have to say that we have used the A&M Conservation Group for many, many years for their equipment because we have done this in the past. They always come out ahead. It does take staff time.
I'm sorry, can you please turn on the microphone?
It's,
It wasn't on. Thank you, I thought it was on. So, we have used A&M Conservation Group for many, many years because they, many of the conservation equipment is coming from Niagara Conservation, which is one of our better manufacturers, and they tend to have the lowest costs. And in the past, this has consistently been the case. It is still the case. Overall, they have the lowest product costs. There's another group called, what's the name of it? New Resources Group, which also has some of the same products. So we got a quote from them as well. They do not carry all the same products, so we were not. And a lot of this also goes back to long ago when we tested many of these products to see what was the best consumer products. The shower heads, years ago when we went with the inexpensive shower heads, we got complaint after complaint after complaint after complaint. So we went to a middle line where it actually has water sense rating and people like them. They work very well, they last for a long time. Eventually they with our current water environment, they do eventually get mineral buildup, and so people come and replace them. But our biggest products are shower heads and aerators. Those go out our door every single day. Our outreach events, we have Fix a Leak Week coming up in March, and we're going to be at 3 of the farmers markets locally, as well as doing a leak detection workshop in partnership with CalAm. So we need, right now we have critical need for hose nozzles, moisture meters, dish squeegees, things that we use for our outreach efforts. And so this particular item came to you because we tend to wait until we're at the bottom of our supplies and then come in. And so you come in and you see a very large purchase. And in some cases, we could just do them as we need them, but in this case, we came in with a big purchase. So as my chart shows you, AM Conservation Group does provide us with the best value for our dollar.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have for you is, the cost estimate was $25,815. On the invoice that we received is $23,615.42.
And Chair, I thought that was fixed for the board packet.
Well, it was, but I want to know, what are we paying? Are we paying the invoice?
You were paying the invoice cost.
The
yes.
invoice cost only? So that's
Yes.
20 was fixed the last, it was right in the administrative packet.
Yeah, I'd comment, half of it was right in the packet.
And half was
and
wrong in the
half was
packet,
wrong,
but
It
it's
looks like you
been corrected.
No,
No, it was not?
incorrectly corrected it.
Right.
You
So
changed it
that's
to the
what,
wrong number.
Okay,
That's,
sorry.
Okay.
that's all right, so yeah,
The invoice cost is what we need. Yeah.
so on page 23, all 3 of those places should be the 23,615.42.
right.
Can I correct this? Actually, Sarah's telling me that sales tax was not included in the amount that they quoted us, and that Suresh asked to have the sales tax added in.
Which
So-
brings it to the
So it's the larger
25,815.
number, yes.
So it is
Oh,
25.
okay, but in the future, I want them to put that sales tax on these invoices too. We want the whole picture.
And,
So-
and Director Evans's recollection is correct. On the staff note itself, there were 2 different numbers
Right.
in those 3 slots, so.
That's why I brought it back up again. Any questions, other board questions on this item? Any questions from the public? So since I pulled it, I'm gonna approve it this time, but I would like to see in the I do it on the second. Move to approve,
Second?
and we have a second, this on the second. I'd like to see 3 bids in, just like we did for the vehicle. I don't care if we go local, and y'all show it to me, even though that's the best one. I want the community to feel like we're looking out for them too, even though they probably higher price than what we looked at. I looked at this company on the internet, and it's across the country, all the way to North Carolina. So I just hope we just start doing a little bit better, putting the bids in, and bring them to the board. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, 6-0. Number 6.
Yeah, I just had some questions. So as I understand it, we are funding 100% of the demonstration garden, and there's no financial contribution from Carmel by the Sea, or is that?
There's no dollar contribution, no. The Public Works Department is contributing the labor.
To do what?
To grade and plant, so it's.
To install cistern, rain garden, signage, actually they're, I think, paying for the cost of the signage because they have the ability to actually print the signs there.
Okay, so our the 4,000 that we're looking at is for the purchase of the different components.
Planting
strictly.
materials, yes, soil, irrigation, cisterns, yes.
Is there any,
And it is a not to exceed, so they may exceed that, they pay for that if they do, and if it's less than that, obviously, we're not paying less.
is there any component to this demonstration where there's any monitoring of, for example, the amount of water that's captured? So in other words, getting some sense of how it's working so that there's some data generated on how it's working? Is that
That's-
part of it? And is it going to be contributed by Carmel, or is there any aspect related to that?
Actually, I think that's a great idea. So I will ask the city if they would be willing to put in some kind of a metering device that they can monitor how much rainwater they collect in their system.
Yeah, because it seems to me that part of demonstrating is to see how effective and actually, how much,
That's a great idea. Yeah.
that's all I had.
Okay. You want to move to approve that?
Yeah, I'll move to approve item number 6.
Okay, we have a first by Director Hoffman, and we have a second by Director Evans. Anyone from the public would like to comment on this item? No comment? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Number 7.
Number 7, I asked that this be pulled. I can appreciate wanting a summary from 20 years of study, but will the summary report be used for some purpose?
Well, first of all, I want to say that this is an item that the staffer this afternoon said, is there any chance it's going to get pulled from consent? Or, I don't want to be at the meeting. I said, oh, there's no chance it's going to get pulled.
Nicely done, George.
Yeah, I think, it's important to do on a periodic basis a roll-up of a large data set. That the district has consistently been rich in data, and when people ask for reports, it's kind of like, well, it's all in spreadsheets, but there's no roll-up of all the information. So I think there is value, the last one was done 10 years ago, to do another one here so that we have a concise report for regulators to look at. It really does give a good indication of the water quality in the Carmel River watershed, as well as an indication of what the food source is for steelhead. And I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I have no problems with it. I didn't know whether it was grant-related, permit-related,
This is-
reimbursement-related, state-required related, and it's...
Well, and consider also, we've got the long-term, not related directly to this, but to BMI in general. We've got the long-term study of the Los Padres Dam, and there's been contention by National Marine Fisheries Service that you should just take that dam out, because look at all of the square miles of watershed you would be adding without a barrier. But no one's really done a good BMI analysis up there to find out how good the food is to support the population. So having this kind of data directly goes to, well, how good is it as a habitat? So this is a historical data further down the river, but ultimately we'd like to do the same thing, above the dam.
And I'm pleased that it's tied into the Los Padres Dam study, so I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you.
I move approval of this item.
Okay, we have a first by Director Raleigh. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by the Vice Chair. Anyone from the public want to comment on this item? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? 6-0. Okay, that's the consent calendar. Moving along.
All right. Sarah, can you pull up
General
item
Manager's
11?
report, please.
Yep. So this is the regular compliance report for compliance with the cease and desist order and the Seaside Basin adjudication. We are now 4 months into the water year on this data. Yeah, thanks. This is the actual versus target production. The nice thing here is that we've moved to under on the Carmel River and under the coastal area. So and again, Laguna Seca, its target is 0, so it's awfully hard to get under. So that bodes positively. Just last month, the total where you see we're 72 acre feet over in total to year to date. We were actually at 164 acre feet over, so we're improving by the month. On the water rights, the one takeaway is Sand City D-Cell is back online. It's still quite a bit below its target, but it had produced 0 year-to-date prior to this month. And because rainfall is scarce, it's somewhat unlikely we'll see much of an uptick in the Table 13 water rights. Looking now at customer demand, this is production from all sources for delivery to customers. There's, I guess, good news in that as of the end of last month, the first 3 months of the year, we were about 41 acre-feet over last year, which we attributed to the lack of rain in October, so a little more irrigation. And we're 43 over now, so we're just kind of holding tight on that level. So it's roughly the same as last month. And then rainfall, we only received 1.25 inches in January, so that's low for January. But we're still at 103% of long-term average with about 11.5 inches total. So if there was no more rain for the rest of the year, unfortunately, we would land in critically dry based on precipitation. Right now, we're above normal. And then here's the rainfall gauge up at San Clemente, and it's just that flat red line, that's cumulative, and that just shows you that we've had nothing in February. On stream flow, unimpaired stream flow measured, again, up at Sleepy Hollow, we're also at 103% of long-term average, and if there was no more rain, oddly, we would end up in the below normal category, which is just, 1 notch below normal, whereas critically dry is 3 notches below normal. So, and I think a little bit of that has to do with the good starting point at the beginning of the water year. And usable storage right now is 101% of long-term average. The ASR injection chart shows that we ceased injection January 21st, and we've not met any of our permit conditions in order to restart injection. However, we are putting water in the ground from Pure Water Monterey. For the last 2 weeks, we've put water in at the percolation basin. We've put water in at the Vado zone wells, which are the shallow wells. And beginning next week, we will go to the deep wells. And there's firsthand proof of this. The chairman and I went out to the plant yesterday and then to the well field. We were shown around the well field by Maureen Hamilton, who's been doing a terrific job as project manager on this project. And it's some of the bluest water that you'll see right now because it's just fresh from the plant. It's like Little Lake Tahoe in that percolation basin right now.
Yes, it is.
And that concludes that report. And before I touch on item 12, I do just want to give you a little update. I can't tell who all gets what emails these days, but there's been an email floating around from a director of another water district who made a few claims that would go to the heart of the Pure Water Monterey expansion should that ever move forward. One of the first claims was that they have a senior right for another 827 acre feet from that project, which is not true. The expansion project stands on its own. To get the additional 827 acre feet, they would have to actually invest in plant expansion, and then it would happen on top of the Pure Water Monterey expansion project. One of the other claims is that we would have to get permission to put any water in the conveyance pipeline. The actual agreement is that the Monterey One Water owns 71% of the capacity of the pipeline. It's their ownership right. There's no other changes in pump stations or anything. And there were a few others. So I think if you have any specific questions, if you did see the email, I'm happy to answer them with kind of the facts on the ground. But it was, it's always interesting when you get a 3 or 4 pages letter and then it's the last 2 lines to say, oh, and this is just my personal opinion. I'm not speaking as a director of such and such an agency. But until you got there, it sounded like what's happened to the agency as a whole is this their opinion, and it's not. It does not represent the opinion of the agency.
One quick question. You said Monterey One Water has the rights to a certain percentage. What was the percentage again?
About 71%. And you can fit more water in that 71% capacity. We'll go to item 12. In November, we made a capital contribution in aid of construction on the reclamation project. You may recall there's a $1.6 million budget tank replacement. And I wanted to just show you a little bit about what's going on out there because they're trying to finish it by the end of March. So this is the tank. It sits kind of behind Poppy Hills Golf Course up in that area near Vizcaíno. It hasn't been touched for 26 years. This is mobilization by United Field Services. And they're bringing in their equipment. And then they have to cut a door to get in. So this is basically getting what's called a door sheet, where you just take it right out of the side of the tank. And they're setting up these are guides so that the welding, in this case, using a welder to cut the slot, will be on a perfect line. And here's the welder going to work. And there's the door cut, or the inside of the tank, which you can see. As you look at the ceiling, you can see there's been some patches that have happened over that 26-year period, but it's really been, it hasn't been completely overhauled. A couple of out of order there, I guess. There we go. So we got the door open. That's how you get the equipment in, with a lot of scissor lifts so that you can just roll them in and then they articulate up to the ceiling. And here's a view. There's a couple little patches of light that come in through some holes in the tank. This is a view of the ceiling, so you can see little patch marks where they did some testing to find out conditions, as well as in the past there would also be some patches usually done from the outside, so it's kind of a combination of things that you're seeing there. These are there's 14 roof patches and 10 rafters that were done in this process. And so the rafters are like the beams that you see holding up the top of the tank. And this is down around the outside. It's very interesting. This large metal object, there's cool water inside. So depending on what side gets more of the sun and the heat, rust tends to vary differently. And then down at the seams, rust is worse in the moisture collecting areas that are in shade a lot. And in the rafters, it was worse in the moisture collecting areas that got sun a lot because you get more evaporation off the top. This is a shear plate. It was originally a 1/4 inch thick. Some of them had gone, rusted down to about 1/8 of an inch, and they're kind of losing their hold. This is from the roof. There was a rust patch there that when it was fully handled, it created a hole in the ceiling that had to be patched. There's the scissor lifts working on the rafters. And that's one of the rafters coming out. And that's the condition of the rafters. The top edges is where most of the rust accumulated, and some of them were as thin as a knife. And some of the rafters were up against the roof, and so the rust on the rafter also just exacerbated and rusted into the roof, and in a couple cases created holes. These are some of the new rafters getting ready to go in. And that's where they're installing the new rafters with the welding tool. And there you can see where one of the rafters was off. You can see the rust mark in the same line as where the rafter was, and 2 little pinholes in the roof of the tank. And that's one of the holes from the top of the tank. And this is a new roof vent that went in. And this is basically an overflow pipe. The overflow pipe used to be on the inside of the tank and then would come all the way down under the water of the tank and then out at the bottom. Instead, well, these are new shear plates. I'll show you the overflow in a second. So we replaced all those little shear plates. They were 1/4 inch originally. Now the new ones are 1/2 inch. You can see the difference right there. And so here you can see that little cup at the top and a fresh white pipe. That pipe used to come all the way down to where the gentleman is, and the hole to the outside was down at the bottom. So it created the opportunity for rust on the down pipe that if you did rust all the way through, you could never get to the top. And so the idea now is to put the overflow cup near the top, run it out through the outside wall, and then come down the outside to get rid of that potential for rusting the overflow pipe underwater. And there you can see it. And then these are patches where they've come in and they sandblast. Basically, they come in and they blast for 4 days and then coat, and then blast for 4 days and coat. And that's all I have. There was 3 new slides that came in on the programmable logic control and some other things. But anyway, so you get a sense of what was going on. It's a big project. They're supposed to be able to start putting water back in the interior of the tank on March 13th, and then focus on the outside of the tank as we start heading into irrigation season. So that's it.
Okay, any question from the board? Director Rowley.
That's a huge tank. What's the capacity, just to get a scale of visual?
I don't know.
I don't know if it's 3,000,
Top of my head.
10,000, 100,000. I have no scale.
From the size of it, I think it's probably 400,000 or 500,000 gallon.
I'd say, yeah, I was just gonna, I think we agree it's bigger. Yeah.
3 to 5 million gallon. It looks similar size to the ones that that are all over Salinas with Cal Water Service, and that's
Yes,
And then Dave, is that the one that's down across from the Community Services District by the fire station?
Yeah, it's actually further
Downhill,
back. So
turn right?
if you, yeah, so it's not that one. It's painted brown on the outside, or it was painted brown. And it's further up. I could GPS it for you, but I can't
That's
remember the
okay.
exact
It's up-
location.
It's up closer on the other side of Poppy Hills.
Yeah, it's on the downhill side of Poppy Hills towards Vizcaíno. And when the Pebble Beach Company wants to purchase potable water to augment in a drought, it comes out of our meter on Vizcaíno, so it's kind of over on that side.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you were coming up Stevenson towards PBCSD, so you're coming uphill, it'd be on your right, kind of down off of one of the fairways on the back side of, or no, the front side of Poppy. So it's around 7th, maybe.
It's just up slope from the new athletic field they built for Stevenson, yeah.
okay.
That's better locator, yeah.
Just a couple of questions. Dave, I'd like for you to keep a running number on Sand City desal. How long, when it's down and when it comes back online throughout the year, so
Yeah.
we can see how much that is running.
Yeah, we do. You remember the issues with that are the wells
Wells,
need to be moved, and you got to get approval to actually pay for the wells, and who's going to pay. Cal-Am has a proposal where they would make the investment. But, so it's been a problem. And then your waste discharge permit, it's supposed to be no saltier than ocean water, which means you need to take brackish water, less salty than ocean water, so that when you do the return flow, it doesn't get any saltier than the ocean.
well, I'd just like for you to keep a number
Yeah,
on this up and any other questions from the board on the general manager report? And since it's a little public, any from the public? Okay, we're moving along. All right, the director's report, including AB 1, 2, 3, 4, reports on trips, conferences, and attendance and meetings. Any directors have anything? Okay, just to slow it up just a little bit, I have a little bit of a report. I want to thank the general manager and Pure Water Monterey staff for giving me a tour of the plant out there while it's operating. It's not fully operating, but it's operating and it's working. And I want to thank Maureen, our engineer here, Hamilton, about the injection well site, taking up there, showing me all the wells. They look well. They even tried to get me to start one up, crank it, and I didn't want to touch it in case something happened to it. So, yeah, why break it? Why break it while the water is going through it? And took me down there to the where the water, I seen the water where you seen the picture at, and that was really good, really great. And lastly, I want to thank Director Adams for a comment she made as a supervisor at last night PUC meeting here in Seaside. I think it was about 40 speakers. I think they spoke well. I want to thank Mr. Laredo for having Fran Farina there so she can hear the comments. I would like the district to see, can they get a tape? This gentleman taped that, and it's a public meeting, and I'd like to get that tape to put on our website if we can. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
we will have a transcript of it as well.
yes. But I think on the website is another address that I like to put on there is from the Ratepayer Advocate, so people can send comments to them. So if we can put those things on there. But Supervisor, I want to thank you. You spoke for a lot of the district ratepayers just with your comments.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you being
Very
there.
much. Thank you.
So-
That's very kind.
Okay, now moving along. Public hearings, we don't have any. Action items.
Thank you. This first one, item 14, begins on page 77 of your packet. This is an annual report from the Citizens Oversight Panel, the Ordinance 152 Citizens Oversight Panel. For those of you who weren't around in 2012, that was an ordinance that was created to assess a new water supply charge in lieu of the user fee, which had been temporarily disbanded, I guess, by the Public Utilities Commission. That water supply charge, we elected to collect it as the cheapest collection mechanism as a fee on the assessor's bill. That created quite a bit of consternation among the Taxpayers Association, because to them it looked like a tax, and to the realtors, because anything that's on a property tax bill affects their industry. They were very loud opponents to the charge, which ultimately passed. But part of the compromise was creating a panel of citizens to make sure that it was being spent consistent with intention, that overhead wasn't too high, and that ultimately all or a portion of it could be retired or sunset. And you'll hear those themes in their annual report. And there's one member of the committee who's here, but she does not look like she's prepared to make any comments. So, and we did put a notice out to the entire committee that if they wanted to either bolster or challenge any of these statements, that they could do so.
Okay, any question from board members? Go ahead, Director Hoffman.
Dave, under the first one, Measure J costs, it says a portion of the panel believes, was a vote taken, and so what was the vote?
Yes, so interestingly, there was a vote taken when the panel met, and I can't remember if it was April, May, June, July. Might have been August. And there were only 5 members voting, and it was 4-1 to say, hey, we definitely don't want this fee used to support Measure J costs. At the last meeting, which was fully attended, and we talked about the issue of the previous vote, we did a straw poll, and the general consensus of that group was flipped. And so we just went with language that said they remain divided on the issue.
Okay, because in reading it, it just gives the impression that a minority of the panel, so I just want to get a sense of
Yeah.
how split or it was.
I would say right now it's very close to half and half, you know, like 5 to 3.
5 to 3.
Yeah, 5 to 3 actually
I'm in favor.
in favor, or in favor of being able to tap it if you need it, not to run out and use it as a primary funding mechanism, but yeah.
So one of the 4 that was against using the money switched their vote? If it was
I
become
think-
5 to 3,
I
when
think
it was 4 to 1
I think
beforehand?
went off the committee. Yeah. Yeah, with new appointees, the complexions changed a little bit.
I think my appointee was
Yeah.
as was mine.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Go
I
ahead,
do
Director
just have a
Adams.
couple of questions. this is on the whole report, or just on item one?
Just the oversight,
Okay.
yeah, just on that,
The whole report.
the whole report, yeah, well,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yes, I do, but yeah, I just had a few questions, I'm not terribly clear about it. But I was wondering if how do we know that the CPUC will not disallow are taking this water supply charge again?
Or the user fee, rather.
user
Yeah,
fee,
so the user
yeah.
fee, yeah, the district's four funding sources are the user fee, which is collected, you can see it as a charge on your California American bill. The water supply charge, which is off the assessor's roll. The property taxes, small amount of property taxes, and then permit fees. The assurance that we have that the user fee will never be discontinued by the PUC again is the Supreme Court ruling that we were the first ones to sue the Public Utilities Commission in front of the Supreme Court. And
Water matter for
on-
over 20 years.
Yeah,
And one.
and one, yeah.
And then another question, this has to do with an item 5, the local projects, and we're speaking about the airport well repurposing. The airport well.
Yep.
And I was wondering what it was, and did it come to fruition?
Yes. So, and Mr. Bruno is here on the item that he probably has an interest in, and we haven't had public comment yet, so just give him. Yeah.
Just in time.
So the airport had old remediation wells. So on the north side of the airport, there were paint stills and other things like trichloroethylene, TCE, that had contaminated a portion of the groundwater. And so these remediation wells basically pump all the contaminated water out, treat it, pull the VOCs out, and put fresh water back in, and now it's relatively fresh. John Lear was instrumental with a previous employee of getting them to keep 3 wells, 4 wells, 3. 3 wells in place, and it all comes together. There's a tank, and so it is a potential sub-potable supply right now, but pretty decent quality. So the airport's now looking at, for example, trying to get the car rental washing done with that supply instead of potable water. Cheaper, sufficient, and then that would free up water that they could use for their terminal expansion project and that type of thing. So that's there. Pacific Grove local water project, we contributed money, and that local project's online and irrigating the golf course and the cemetery. So a number of these have done pretty well. I think we've found another one that might be coming forward from the city of Carmel who would like to irrigate Devendorf Park with reclaimed water rather than potable water. So it's little bits of seed money.
Right. So with the airport water specifically, I'm unclear about this, but is it close enough that they could, if it's not already being done, that water could be used to irrigate either Monterey Pines or Del Monte Golf Course?
Yeah, so we looked into Monterey Pines. And so the district's priority is to offset potable use.
Correct.
And so Monterey Pines pretty much gets all of its water right now from her and on the fairgrounds, plus its own wells. So while it could be an alternate supply, they're in a pretty good position.
Right.
And you know how they have a pond at Monterey Pines.
Mm-hmm.
When the Pebble Beach Company came in on Del Monte Golf Course, they sunk 2 wells that we helped fund a portion of. And they were going to put a water feature, I think between 5 and 6, or 6 and 7, it's 5 and 6. And then they ultimately decided not to do that yet. And so we have 2 wells that aren't being used to irrigate. I always harbored the notion that you could do a 1.25 mile pipe and take the airport water to Del Monte. But no one seems to want to spend that money. And so it's a good idea. It's just still just an idea.
Okay.
But the water that they're using currently on the golf course isn't essentially coming from Cal-Am potable water.
It is.
It is. Okay.
Yeah. And at one point, probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago, Del Monte. Both Del Monte and PG were the only two courses in the entire peninsula that were using potable. And the water bill got over $1 million a year. And Chris Dahlheimer, who's superintendent, managed to get it down to about $500,000 a year as recent as last year. But that comes at a cost to, the look and feel of the course.
Okay, so you're talking about Del Monte versus Monterey Pines.
Right, Monterey Pines, 100% well water, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, thank you for that answer. I was curious about that. And then, as we're looking at local projects, is there anything new that we should be considering?
That Devendorf project,
The
that is,
Devendorf
yeah,
project,
that's
great,
probably the next
great.
one that we'll see.
Good. And then finally, are Pasadena and Laguna Seca on recycled water, their golf courses?
No, they're on wells,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Director Evans.
Thanks. I would like to thank the Citizens Oversight Panel. They've been doing a lot of good work for many years, and I appreciate their efforts and their volunteering of their time to come out and do that. I would ask, Chair, that in item number 3, it does state that the panel reminds the board that June of 2020 will be the end of the third year of dual collections. I would like to recommend that we have those discussions starting very soon rather than waiting until the last minute to have a discussion on that. I think that there's a lot of opportunity to explore on that, and I think I'd like the time to do that. So I would ask that you agendize that sooner rather than later.
Okay. When we finish questions, go ahead. Director Rowley, you had something?
I only had on that item 3, the first line says a user fee began collection in July. It restarted in July, didn't it?
Right,
'Cause you'd been
yeah.
collecting it for 8 or 12 or some number of years.
Oh, 20,
20, okay.
30 maybe. Yeah, it's probably 30. I mean, we're 41 years old at this point, so we're probably collecting it over 30.
Yeah.
Okay. When is the next time the committee gonna meet?
It'll be about 3 months. We haven't scheduled a specific date.
Okay. I like the committee also to look at something, grant money coming to, should we do grant money outside of the district using these kind of funds? Everybody on the board probably know what I'm talking about. We got a grant out there for $100,000 outside of the district. And it was pulled from this agenda so they can go to the county. But I want to make sure that that committee know what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think in
So-
that case, because it's mitigation, we probably wouldn't take it from the water supply charge, we'd take it from the user fee.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
whichever one, I like to have them look at that and bring that up.
okay.
Any other question from the board? Okay, out to the community. Public comment on this item.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Paul Bruno. I'm a resident of the unincorporated area of Monterey. First of all, I want to just thank the staff for the report. I also want to thank the staff and the district in general for allowing us to participate as we do in this committee. We have a charge, and we discuss the things that are under our charge, but we also take a lot of time discussing other things. I think it's good for those who are on the committee to learn these additional things. Things are happening. And I think it's good feedback to the district as well. It's almost like a little think tank group that gets together, and we do what we're supposed to do, but also we discuss other things, and I think it's important. So I do appreciate the time that is spent on this process. I agree with the report. There's a lot of things in there. I represent the Taxpayers Association on the board. We are always concerned with how funds are spent, whether they're spent properly, whether or not we could get rid of the charge and go back to water bills being on water bills. We stress that over and over. But overall, I think the report is fair. It fairly represents our opinions. I wasn't here for public comment. I was at a fundraiser, but I just want to mention one thing. Front page of today's paper, seawater intrusion in the Salinas Valley. To think that we're going to use the Salinas Valley water as source water for an expansion of our plant over at Monterey 1, and that's going to solve our problems, I think is something we should think about. Those farmers and those people out there have their own water problems. As the chairman of the Seaside Basin Water Master, I'm concerned about replenishing the basin, and if they don't have water for their own basin, they don't have water for ours. And so I'm deeply concerned when we start pursuing paths, thinking that source water is available. So that's off topic, but that would have been my public comment had I been here earlier and not
Well,
having
Mr. Bruno,
champagne.
you got it in. So you
I got it
wanna
in.
close it? You wanna
And I
close
have
it
a
up
minute
now?
and 1 second left. And-
Oh,
and-
well, no, you
I think
lost
I'm not
that
going
when
to fill
you-
it anymore. I think I'm good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Any other public comment? No other public comment, back to the board. And this item, we're accepting it. Do I-
I'll make a motion to accept.
We have a first, and we have a second, a first by Director Everson, second by Director Evans. Say again?
Director Evans?
Yes.
I thought you said Director.
Oh, no. I thought I did too. I thought I caught it. Director Evans and second by Director Adams. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? 6-0. Thank you. Next item, General Manager.
Okay, this item is from the Water Demand Division.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, this evening you are being asked to consider a request for a delay of payment in capacity fees for a nonprofit public benefit project, the Peninsula Shelter Project on Olympia Avenue in Seaside. The applicant is the Community Human Services and the Gathering for Women. Oh. So, Community Human Services and Gathering for Women are requesting the board approval for a delayed payment of the capacity fees associated with a water permit for the Peninsula Shelter Project in Seaside. The project will provide 30 beds for families, women, and children. They also will offer a classroom. They have office spaces for caseworkers, reception area, laundry, and dining areas. The change of use of the building from a Group 1 non-residential commercial use to the dorm type of use that they're proposing increases water capacity by 0.315 acre feet. And that 315 acre feet has a capacity fee associated with it of $8,693.07. And that would be due at the time their water permit is issued. And at this point, they're ready to pull the permit for the project. Community Human Services and the Gathering for Women are 501c3 nonprofit organizations. They have stated that there's a substantial financial hardship that would occur by having to pay our capacity fees. They are relying on a homeless emergency assistance program fund to help with their capital development as well as operation during the first few months of the shelter. And the applicant itself is responsible for covering the initial operating expenses. Payment of the district's capacity fee would negatively affect the ability to complete construction and use this HEAP funding. Rule 24H2, which is what you're considering this request under, says that the board can defer payment of the capacity fee for California nonprofit public benefit corporation projects when it would result in a substantial hardship to the project proponent such that the project could be jeopardized. If the board approves a delay, a deed restriction is recorded on the property and payment of the deferred capacity fee with an interest rate set by the board is held off. However, if it ever changes to a for-profit operation, either as actually I'm going to go into this in a minute further, but if it ever changes to for-profit, the capacity fees plus interest would be payable at that time. The staff recommendation is that, first of all, the administrative committee supported the request and recommended that the interest rate be set at 4%. That would be, again, reported on the deed restriction. And staff is recommending that the board adopt the findings of approval, allowing the delayed payment of the capacity fees with the finding, correction to finding number 5, that it be reflect the interest rate of whatever the board selects, which, like I said, the administrative committee recommended 4%. And if you have any questions, I can answer that. Also, Amy Stoker, who's the finance director, is here, and she could speak to the project as well if you have any questions.
Okay, board questions?
Chair, I have a few questions.
Director Evans and then Director Hoffman.
Great, thank you. So you stated that the payment of the capacity fee plus interest would be due should this revert to or be transferred to a nonprofit entity. If this property is
A non-nonprofit, a for-profit.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
a for-profit, yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, yes, thank you. If this does change to another nonprofit entity, for whatever reason, these two were not able to continue the mission, but another
The
agency stepped
deferment
in,
would continue.
the deferment would continue
Yes.
for that, okay. Yes, that was it, thank you.
Okay, Director Hoffman.
Dovetailing on Director Evans, why would the exemption, for lack of a better word, be transferred to the next nonprofit without having to show the hardship? Why, I don't understand why it's automatic as opposed to, unlike these organizations having to demonstrate financial hardship. So I'm just concerned that another nonprofit, which is not under financial hardship, if they were to assume the property, would get the benefit without having the hardship to be associated with it. So I don't know that what we're approving here goes into the detail that you just stated to Director Evans, saying that it's transferable.
Our district rule, which is in your board packet, I believe says that it remains in place unless it transfers to a for-profit organization. And so that's a good question. And I believe what you are considering right now with the capacity fee is the situation that's currently before you. I don't know, I mean, I'm repeating what's in our rules and regulations, and I don't know that that was considered or discussed in the
Yeah,
past.
it's kind of a, I'd almost say it's a loophole, because it's in the obverse, it's, shall be paid in full upon transfer to any entity other than a California nonprofit public benefit corporation. So it slides in there because we never addressed it in the rules.
So
Yeah.
which means it's something that we probably should address, because I would have heartburn with any nonprofit being able to get this benefit, even though they don't have a financial hardship. The concept of deferring, basically, it's not a delay, it's actually exactly a waiver of the fee, because they'll never pay it under this scenario, which I'm fine with the financial hardship aspect of it. But I guess, why isn't it a consideration to have them work out a payment plan over time, as opposed to simply just waiving it in total?
You may ask the applicant, and again, we're just following what's in our rules and regulations. This is an option for them to request this.
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
So couldn't that issue be addressed in the deed restriction, that if it was exchanged to another nonprofit that had, equal need, or, I don't know how you.
Yeah, I don't think we
word it.
can. What we'd have to do is sweep it up in a cleanup ordinance when we go in and fix the rules.
Well,
I
and
don't think
not
we
only
can-
that, but if we have a deed restriction on the property, that deed restriction would remain in place. So it would require an entity to come in and ask to have that removed, at which point it would trigger our review and assessment of the connection charges. I don't know that we would necessarily be notified that there was a change in the status of the nonprofits.
Right.
Because the deed restriction runs with the land, not with the entity.
Right, but there's no restriction on a new nonprofit not being able to fund that.
No, but there would be no trigger that would require them to pay a connection charge.
Right.
Just a
Director Adams.
a comment, as I'm understanding this, they're in for 10 years. So if another nonprofit were to come in and take it over, I would expect that the amount of interest that they would have to pay for a 10-year time frame would really be exorbitant. And I can't think of any nonprofit that I know that would easily be able to absorb that sort of thing. So my hope is that we can, number one, I do not want to see this slow down. I think it's important, and I know it's important for this project to be able to move forward without any kind of restrictions or headaches that they have not accounted for, they have not planned for. So my hope is that we would be able to agree this evening that we can move forward with this so that that shelter, which is so desperately needed in our community, desperately needed, will be able to keep on their process so that they'll be able to open as they have it planned. And if we want to go back and rewrite the policy or the program and the rules, I think that's something we should look at totally separately from what we're deciding today for this very, very desperately needed shelter on the Monterey Peninsula.
My question was only to address Director Hopkins'
Hopkins,
concerns.
yeah. Thank
And
you.
I'm fine with this.
Director Rowley?
Yeah, I'm fine with it too, but I do think, going back to General Manager's comment about updating the rules, maybe there should be some language that when there's a transition to a new ownership, it'll be reviewed again by the board. Just some simple language so that it doesn't just slide in because of some rule that was established years ago.
Yep, and whenever you look at these, our rules and regs, not just this one, but any of them with fresh eyes, and you realize that they've been modified since 1981 and 88. I mean, even if you look at page 96, the footnote is the number of ordinances that got passed that modified this rule. We're always finding something where we go, what? So I think that it probably would bear writing into the rule that you have to, once again, review financial hardship. Now, like in this case, at 4% in 10 years, it would be $12,868. And so for, any nonprofit's going to come in and say, that's a hardship for us because it takes a lot to raise $12,000. So.
Okay, is the applicant here?
Yes.
Would she like to say anything? You want to say anything on your behalf?
Only that I appreciate the support that has been expressed tonight. I hope you will consider the,
Name?
oh, is it not on?
No name, I'm just.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Amy Stoker. I'm the finance director. And as she said, this is an incredibly important project. We don't have a shelter on the peninsula right now for families and women. And we were fortunate enough to get this HEAP funding, which was very finite, and the water permit was not known at the time that we put the application in. It was very preliminary. So we didn't have that, and as we pointed out, that means we would need to go out and raise that money, as it wasn't in the HEAP. We do have a 10-year commitment for the HEAP money, so we are committed for 10 years for running this shelter, and are very excited about doing it, and I think it's sustainable, and we certainly are, intend to be there in 10 years and longer than that. But the county owns the building, so we do have, we were required to get a deed restriction to get the HEAP funding. So I don't have that with me, but I think that deed restriction is specific to shelter operations, if that makes any difference to your decision.
Director Evans, you have any?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that I think it's a great project, and I move approval at the 4% interest rate as noted in the.
Okay.
Second.
Let me close public comment first. Any other public comment?
Do the motions first.
Any other,
Jumping all over this.
any other public
sorry.
comment on that item? Okay, make that motion.
So again, I'll make the motion to approve this with the 4% interest rate. Approve the
Okay.
Thank
deferment.
you, and I'd like to second that motion.
We have a motion by Director Evans and second by Director Adams. Discussion. Go ahead, General
One,
Manager.
one point of clarification too, if the county were to take it back, they are not a nonprofit public benefit corporation under California law, so that would trigger a relook at it.
I like to see you collect that.
I'd like to make a comment too, that
Yes,
if a
go.
nonprofit needed to sell the property, I mean, it belongs to the county, but in this type of situation, if they had to sell the property and they couldn't find a buyer that would be able to front the interest rate plus the original fee, so there's, that whole rule has to be looked at.
Go ahead, Director Hoffman.
Yeah, no, I strongly support the project as a whole, and it's unfortunate we need it so badly, and it's way overdue. But just as time goes by, we learn where the loopholes are and what we're doing, just we need to do our best to clean it up. And to your point, it is a county-owned building, so even if this organization left the premises, it'd revert back to the county. And so there wouldn't be, I don't think, a problem ultimately.
Oh, I know the county, they would stiff us.
I know it too. I know it too. Okay.
Just
And
as
on
one
that-
final comment, I
Yeah.
just hope that perhaps in 10 years, we won't have to have this. It would be wonderful if we were able to address the problem in such a way. Because this program, unlike many other shelters, does absolute case management and really works with the people who are staying at the shelter to get back on their feet with job training and many other things. Not that I'm prejudiced toward the process or anything, but
And I
Okay.
just want to note also that it's been a great collaboration between multiple entities, between the county, the city of Seaside allocating water, the two nonprofits, the HEAP grant. It's a phenomenal example of a lot of people working together to make it happen.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Thank you. Where we at? We did the last one on consent. Any information items or staff reports? Anybody like comments or anything? Okay, and anything else? Is that it? That will be it. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.